Hey guys, welcome to the Vital Fitness Coaching channel. I'm Christina Scoggins. I'm an IPE Bikini Pro competitor, an amateur boxer and kickboxer, and an ACE certified personal trainer and online coach. I'll probably use this channel mostly for bikini stuff. I am in prep right now for my first NPC show. I'm about 6 weeks in, but I'd also like to cover some stuff in the fight world just as it comes up. And so this one is actually like a blend of the two and kind of talking about the differences in weight cutting for each one. So the reason I really want to go over this is I've had like friends and family ask me whenever I've said like, hey, yeah, I'm about to start prep for a bodybuilding show. They expect it to be in like the next week or two because that's usually how it is with a fight. So anytime I've taken a fight, it's like, okay, it's gonna be in like a month or two max, but sometimes it's like a week out. And with fighting, you're able to have a shorter time frame. So let's say like 7 days. And if you have a few pounds to lose, anywhere from like 1 to 15, you can lose that in 7 days for a fight. Whereas for bodybuilding, you can't do that. Just because the goal of losing weight for a fight versus the goal of losing weight for a bodybuilding or physique competition are very different. So the biggest difference in cutting weight for bodybuilding or a physique show versus cutting weight for a fight is the why behind it. So fighters, the main reason that they cut weight is so that once they cut that weight, they have an advantage in the ring or the cage by a weight advantage and a strength advantage if they've done their weight cut and refueling properly. So the main purpose is to gain an advantage, a strength advantage over their opponent and a weight advantage over their opponent on fight day. And they want to come into fight day being the best, strongest, biggest version of themselves. On the bodybuilding side of things, the main goal is to lose as much fat as possible while maintaining as much muscle as possible for the way that you look, right? So fighters are going for like a performance aspect. Bodybuilders are going for like an aesthetic thing, right? So focusing on maintaining muscle, losing fat, and then fighting is just getting rid of the weight and then getting it back on as soon as possible for them to be able to perform well on fight day. There really aren't very many similarities to the two weight cutting processes. The only thing would be the length of time. So if a fighter knows far enough out in advance, they could start their weight cut a little bit earlier and longer, but most fighters are really going to leave it to just that last like week before, because the main thing is they still want to have that size, right? So they're not like, they might cut away some fat over time, but they're not trying to just like get as lean as possible because they want to be able to have a weight advantage to their opponent in the ring, right? But they have to weigh in at a certain weight. So for me, for example, for one of my boxing matches, I had to be 120 or 125, right? And so whenever you weigh in for that, you have to be right on. Occasionally you can be like a pound or two below, just depending on what style of fighting you're doing. If you're, fighting in the UFC versus fighting at like a amateur lower level. But fighters are really just trying to use a week to just get rid of as much water in their body as possible so that they can then, after they weigh in, usually have 24 hours. So after they weigh in, their main goal is to go back and refuel, rehydrate, and just get as much, nutrients into their body as possible so that they can perform their best on fight day and when the fight happens. Bodybuilders, on the other hand, or physique competitors, have to take a much longer approach to the process. So anywhere from like 12 weeks is probably the shortest time frame to, let's say, like 20 weeks is probably average. 12 to 20 weeks average. And the main reason for that is because they're not just trying to get rid of water out of their body to step on a scale to be a certain weight. The weight doesn't usually really matter. I know once you get into like the bigger classes, like bodybuilding, actual bodybuilding, like men's physique, that sort of thing, sometimes they will put you in a weight class for that. But usually in bodybuilding, they put you in a height class. So the weight doesn't really matter. All they're caring about is how you look. So the biggest focus for bodybuilders is just shedding as much body fat as possible while maintaining as much muscle as possible so that they come in like super lean, pretty much in every category you're in. You don't want to see any fat or jiggle, like even in bikini, you know, they don't want to see you jiggling. Obviously they don't want to see super striated, crazy muscles, but your main goal is still to lose fat while maintaining as much muscle as possible. So doing that in a longer time frame, like 12 weeks to 20 weeks, is ideal, because the slower you can lose that body fat, the more easily you'll be able to hold on to the muscle. Another big difference here is on the nutrition side. So honestly, the most fighters, especially at an amateur level, but even at the pro level, don't have a nutrition coach or nutrition guidance. So it's a lot harder for them to go into a weight cut with the nutrition side of things. Most people just focus on doing a water cut. Whereas on the bodybuilding world, you know, it's all about nutrition, and your coach is going to give you details on how many macros, you know, they're either going to give you a meal plan and say, eat this every day, eat this, this, and this for each meal, eat at this time. Or they're going to say, hey, here's your macros, eat these, you can eat whatever you want, but you have to fill in these macros with a goal of let's maintain muscle and lose fat at the same time. But a lot of fighters don't have that in their pocket. They don't have nutrition coaches. They might have a friend at the gym who has done a weight cut before, and they were like, hey, I did this water cut, it worked for me, I lost 15 pounds, which is what I did. Or they might have a coach who's going to walk them through a water cut, but usually those people are not registered dietitians or certified in nutrition. They're just really trying to get that weight off and then get them refueled for the fight. Another thing to note here too is, for fighters, they want to be the best version of themselves on a fight day, right? So they go through hell the week leading up to their fight, doing their water cut, you know, maybe not eating, right? Because they're just trying to keep the weight out of their body. So you don't want to add food and carbs and that sort of thing the week of a fight. A lot of times people will take that out. They might just only eat like chicken for a whole entire week just to get rid of the carbs, so they're not holding on to water. And they're really just trying to get rid of that water. That's the biggest thing. Because they want to be the best the day of the fight. They'll suffer all the days before, right? But the main thing is to have the best performance that they can on fight day. So the most important thing for them is the time between weighing in and then the time that they actually step into the ring or the cage to fight, because that time in between is whenever they're going to rehydrate and refuel. So with fighting, obviously brain trauma is a big concern. So if you're really dehydrated and you don't have that extra water in your body and in your brain, it's a lot easier to, you know, get knocked out, get concussions and that sort of thing. So their main focus is step on the scale, be the weight I need to be, and then they spend that 24 hours or however long they have to refuel and get their body ready to then step in the cage, hopefully 5 to 20 pounds heavier, and maybe have a, you know, weight advantage on their opponent who maybe didn't do their cut as well and didn't refuel as well. So maybe they only come in 5 pounds heavier, and now you have the advantage of having, you know, more weight on your opponent, and then you're also refueled well. Also, it could go the opposite direction and you could not refuel so well, and maybe not come in rehydrated and get more easily concussed and get knocked out more easily. So that is a very important part of the process, but you have a very short window of 24 hours or around then to get everything on point to be able to step in the cage or the ring the best fighter, the best version, the strongest version of yourself. Whereas for bodybuilding, you're taking 12 to 20 weeks to become the best version of yourself. And when you're on stage is when you're suffering the most. So whenever you're competing on a stage for bodybuilding, you feel the worst on stage usually. I mean, there's enough of like an adrenaline, and hopefully you've been able to carb up a little bit, that it's not that terrible. But usually, especially for like guys, if they've been doing like a water depletion just for the week up to try and dry out, usually don't feel too great on stage. Your feet hurt for girls wearing heels, tight bikinis that sometimes scratch you, you're glued in. But your whole thing is you've worked for 12 to 20 weeks to get this physique, and you're gonna suffer on stage for a little bit, but then after you get off stage, you have plenty of time to recover and refuel and rehydrate and those sort of things. Whereas like for fighters, they only have 24 hours. Sometimes even less than that. I've done same day weigh-ins before. So sometimes you might only have a couple of hours to really get your Gatorade in, your Pedialyte, anything you can to feel better. And then there's also a process to that too, because you don't want to overdo it, do it too quickly, make yourself sick, throw up, have diarrhea, something like that, to where now you're just like getting rid of all of the water that you just tried to take in. So that's a disadvantage for fighting, because you can do it wrong. Most people do. But then for bodybuilders, you have days and weeks to rehydrate. You can get off stage and you have plenty of time to just like refuel, rehydrate. There's no need to like go chug a bunch of water or anything, because no one's coming at you trying to fight you and give you concussions, right? So it's like you're okay being dehydrated for a little bit, because most likely you're in a safe enough environment that you have plenty of time to refuel and recover. Now, one thing I do want to mention too is obviously like both of these things are pretty extreme. So if we're just talking about like cutting weight or dieting for a general lifestyle type thing, you might not necessarily take either of these approaches, right? There's no point in cutting like you're cutting for a fight, because all you're doing there is just getting rid of water, right? So if you want to lose 5 pounds really quick, just go sit in a sauna and you'll lose it in water. You're not really going to come out looking any different. Like for me, whenever I cut weight for my fight, I lost 17 pounds in a week just doing a water cut, and I looked terrible. Like I was the same weight that I had weighed on stage for my first bodybuilding show, and I'll try and find pictures so I can compare. But how I looked before stepping on a scale for my fight, I looked like a skeleton person. Like my eyes were all hollowed out, and it just looked sick because I was like completely depleted of water. Versus like for my bodybuilding show, I weighed the same, but it was a 16-week process of me just losing the fat, permanently, until I gained it back after the show. But that's for another day. But for losing the fat and holding on to that muscle, so that when I walked on stage, I was just all muscle. I didn't have to really we did a tiny bit of water manipulation, but that might have changed my weight by like half a pound by the time I got to stage. So not nearly as dramatic as like cutting 17 pounds for a fight, right? So they're two different processes, and they're for two different goals, right? So fighters, we're trying to gain a weight advantage, strength advantage by doing this, whether it's healthy or not, also for another day. And then bodybuilders, we're just trying to lose as much fat as possible while maintaining as much muscle as possible. And it's usually a pretty long, drawn out process. So I hope that kind of covers everything. Or if you guys have ever had any questions or wondered what the difference between the two is, hopefully that kind of clears some things up about the processes. But I'd also love to make a video about maybe like the water cut I did for my fight, and just kind of go over like the process I used, how much weight I lost, that sort of thing. It's something I've passed along to quite a few guys at my gym that they've successfully used it for water cutting for fights too. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. My next video will probably be kind of like a day in the life on bikini prep, since I am in prep for my first NPC show right now, probably like 15 to 16 weeks out. Honestly, no idea, just kind of waiting until I get closer to stage lean, and then I'll pick a show. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.